Emotional Intelligence, presented by Danny Dennemiller, Rachel Murar, and Kevin Smith. Narrated by a terrible British accent. In today's world, a great leader can make or break a company. After all, people don't usually quit their jobs, they quit their bosses. So, highly developed leadership skills are an essential part of the makings of a great and influential leader. And emotional intelligence is just one of those very skills.
Emotional intelligence? What is that?
Emotional intelligence, or EI, is a skill that got termed when this guy, John Mayer, psychologist at the University of New Hampshire, got with this other guy, Peter Salovey, the current president of Yale, and they said that EI was the ability to accurately perceive your own and others' emotions, to understand the signals emotions send about relationships, and to manage your own and others' emotions.
So, basically it's about being aware of not only your own feelings, but of the others around you?
Well, it's a little more complex than that. In fact, let's break it down. EI consists of 5 main principles: self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, relationship management, and cognitive competencies. Any combination of those principles establishes a person's EI.
But why does this matter? How can knowing someone's EI impact a company, or even me as an employee?
Let's look at you as an employee first. Technical skills may have gotten you the job, but it is the EI that will help you excel in your position. People who can control their emotions, demonstrate empathy, and work to understand others have a distinct advantage. However, as for the manager, Daniel Goleman, a Rutgers psychologist, says, without emotional intelligence, a person can have the best training in the world, an incisive analytical mind, and an endless supply of smart ideas. However, he or she may not make a great leader. Or, what about your overall company? Companies with high levels of EI have more information within the company, have better company morale, and it tends to translate EI into their personal lives. This can lead to employee retention and social adhesion.
So, strong EI skills means strong leaders?
Well, that depends. EI can be tricky. Leaders can be strong in some areas, yet entirely lacking in others. A famous example could be former President Clinton, who was very empathetic. I feel your pain, yet lacked personal self-control. I did not have oops.
Well, what about me? Can I change my emotional intelligence?
Yes and no. Emotional intelligence is not hardwired. However, it is usually set by the time a person reaches 25. In order to change, one has to understand what drives them. Once you do that, you can analyze your motivation, solicit feedback, and make changes. Feedback can come from a superior, a subordinate, or even a peer. Let's look at some examples. This is Karen. Karen works at Ellis, a small firm that focuses on personal growth. She has around 40 co-workers that all work in the same building. Karen got the job about 3 months ago, while many of the other co-workers have been there for over 5 years. Karen watches them converse after meetings, but does not join in. Often she hears them laughing and thinks they are laughing at her. Karen is very concerned with what everyone thinks of her as a new employee, so one day Karen was asked by her boss to work in the group presentation with 3 of her fellow co-workers. While working together in a group, one coworker made a comment about Karen, saying, "Wow, Karen, I'm surprised you thought of that." Karen became offended by this statement, left the room, and immediately asked to be removed from the project, and she did not even budge when her coworker apologized for his comment. Now, what were some of the things that led to Karen's walking out? What was Karen's motivation in this situation?
I'd say fear or anxiety. She was always afraid of what people thought of her, so when she got placed into a group, she was in an uncomfortable situation for herself. This led her to become very sensitive to this comment without fully understanding why it was being said in the first place.
And could she have done anything differently?
Because before the situation, she may have felt more comfortable with a group presentation. Being the new worker is difficult, but you do have to put in some time and effort yourself to get to know everyone beforehand. Think about her co-worker's comment instead of immediately taking action and reacting. Taking that moment may have given her more clarity on whether he meant to be offensive or not.
However, emotional intelligence doesn't simply apply to only business organizations. In fact, it can apply to many organizations in the workforce.
Really? Like what?
Take teaching, for example. Let's look at Mr. Kern, who teaches 8th grade literature. Mr. Kern has a class of 25 students. One student, Tommy, is often disruptive in class and will refuse to do the work his teacher assigns. Mr. Kern does not understand how all his other students can do the work, but not Tommy. Instead, Mr. Kern's frustration continues to grow until one day when Tommy is yet again disruptive, and the two of them get into a shouting match. It is clear that the other students are uncomfortable by the words exchanged with their teacher and a fellow student. Tommy eventually gets sent to the principal's office, but the classroom never fully recovers from this uncomfortable moment. What are some of the things that led to the outburst? What was Mr. Kern's motivation in this situation?
Well, clearly he was fed up, so I would say his motivation was frustration.
Was this a good motivation? Was this situation handled strongly, or is there room for improvement?
I think there was a better way to handle the situation, as many students became uncomfortable in the class. Not just Tommy. As their teacher, he needs to find a different way to handle his frustration. Something he could have done was simply to talk to his peers or other teachers and see what advice they could give about the student like Tommy. He could also have talked to Tommy himself as a way to develop empathy for his situation. So, emotional intelligence is certainly something that you should be aware of no matter what workforce you're entering or the type of organization you participate in.
Exactly. Especially if you want to continue to grow as a leader. Great leaders are able to drive a company's mission, profits, results, human capital, and their culture. Being aware of one's own emotional intelligence can open a person's ability to successfully influence all of those things.
Great. So is it possible for me to assess my own emotional intelligence? I want to get started.
Yes, in fact there are quite popular self-assessments, but you have to be completely honest in your responses. That way you can identify your weaknesses and your strengths. If you are not honest, then you won't know what you need to work on to improve your EI. Emotional intelligence is something we all could work on, as there is really no perfect leader, not even our presidents. Hey. We all can make mistakes, but it's important to learn from them. Taking a self-assessment can make you aware ahead of time. Let's get started.